Hey, thanks for checking out this course. We've taken all the fluff out of the Lumetri panel, but we haven't taken out the detail. I promise you, you're going to have all the things you expected. We'll take you through all the Lumetri panels, secondary colors, tracking masks, as well as that orange and teal color grade that everybody goes after. You'll learn a lot of things that will demystify all the Lumetri color and color grading. So we're going to teach you how to color correct first, which is the first thing to do. You're going to learn how to use the basic panel to color correct for exposure, fix your white balance, and then fix your saturation. And once that's done, you can apply either LUTs or a color grade over the top of your footage for that specific look or feel that you're looking for. So let's not take any time now, let's jump into it and see what we can create. Let's set up our work panels for color grading. If you're in editing, you need to be in color. If you don't see color, go to Windows, Workspaces, and choose color. The other thing we need to do is go to Window and open Lumetri Color. This should come up on the right hand side here. Also, in this area in the source panel, we should have effects, controls, and Lumetri scopes. We want this to look like this. Again, if you don't see them here, go to Window and choose Lumetri Scopes. Next, let's drag our clip into the timeline, which is called Guy and Girl on a Train. Set this to fit. The scopes I will be using are the Wave Scope, the Vector Scope, and the RGB Parade Scope. But more on each of them in the next sections. Let's take a look at the LumaScope first. We can close the other ones down by right-clicking and just deselecting them. So now we're here with the waveform LumaScope. If it comes up looking like this, waveform type, maybe the colored RGB one, let's just change that to waveform type, Luma. This is read from left to right and follows the video footage from left to right, and a trace is read from top to bottom. Looking at the numbers on the left, 0 is pure black, 100 is pure white, and everything else in between is different shades of tonality, meaning shadows, midtones, highlights, and white and black. This is our first step in correcting exposure. You can see that our image is quite flat looking, almost green, and is very hazy looking. It's a very flat profile. The next scope is going to be the RGB Parade. This scope shows the balance of white balance in the image. If the red and greens as such here are higher than the blue, this shows the temperature of the image that we're looking at, or the video. This can be used for balancing white balance. Our last scope is the Vector Scope YUV, and this is basically a color wheel, and the scope in the middle will show the amount of color that is dominant in the image, such as here towards this yellow and green because of this girl's hair, and also the saturation of the color. So if we increase saturation over here, This will move further away from the center and has the same colors, but they're much more saturated. Let's close down these other scopes for right now and just take a look at the waveform scope. In the Lumetri color panel, we're going to use the basic correction here to adjust tonality, which is contrast and exposure. Our first step is to adjust the blacks, so we can move this little slider down to just above 0. Don't go beyond 0, because that just means it's crushing all the blacks that you'll see here. You just get this muddy effect. So we want to take that line just above 0, like so, just with the blacks. Now for the whites, we want to move this so that this comes up to about 90 something, between 90 and 100. These are the white areas that are in this scene. She has a white t-shirt on. I'm not sure what color his shirt is, or maybe this is white as well. So let's take that up. And if you run out of room here and it's still only around 70, you can just drag on this and it'll drag it up further than you think. So just about here. So the peaks are between 90 to 100. That's brightened it up. Next, we'll take the shadows and we'll drag them down. And you can see that it's blocked here because we need to take the blacks a little bit further now that we moved everything else, like this. So our shadows are in this area here, between 10 and 30. Next, we'll move the highlights. So the highlights are the top area before the whites. So we can bring them up or take them down. If we take them up just a little bit here, and we can also bring the exposure up just a little bit. Contrast is the difference between the blacks and the whites. The range between them. We want a nice range between 10 and 90 is sort of ideal. So that's looking a lot better than it did. You can see the difference by going to basic correction and turning this checkbox off. And we can see how flat the image was and turn it back on. So that's looking good for exposure. We have a nice contrasted image here. Now we look to do white balance fix. There's a few ways to do this. There's a color picker tool here. If you click on it and you find something white in the image, she has a white t-shirt on. So if we click on that, you can see that Premiere will try to adjust based on that. So I'm going to go do Control Z to go back to where we were. Let's bring up the RGB parade scopes. And let's take a look at them here on their own. We can see that green is the dominant color, blue is the lowest, and red is a little bit lower than green. And for a nice balanced image, or white balance, these should all be equal. So looking at the parade scopes, when we do the white balance selector, let's see what happens. Click on this, click on her t-shirt again, and then it balances them out a lot better than what they were. They can still need a little tweak here. So the parade scope shows us that the red's still a little bit high, so the opposite to that is a blue. So if we play around with these sliders, we can bring this up a little bit here. And what we're trying to do is get this image similar in height and down here the same. It's not bad at all down at the bottom, but you can see that the red is here, matches the blue a little bit, but the green's a little bit high. So what we can do is take the green a little bit the other way, like so, and that's not too bad there at all. So again, if you want to turn the effect off, you can go up to Lumetri Color, the FX, click on it once. So this is where we started, and this is where we are now. So it's looking a lot better. It's looking more even. And the next thing is, so if you remember, the first thing is exposure correction, and then white balance, and then saturation. So the final thing in color correction is saturation. So if we right click and do vector scope, here let's take a look at that. We can close the other ones down. And here we can see that the dominant color is the yellow, and then towards the green as well. This is her hair, obviously. You can see here that we have our red box, magenta, blue, cyan, green, and yellow. So red, blue, and green. And then secondary colors are yellow, magenta, and cyan. So the opposite of yellow is blue. Opposite of red would be cyan. The only thing to remember is these boxes are like a safety zone. This was from old school television days. This is too saturated. If your waveform is coming out here somewhere, it's just too much. So we want to try to keep it. If we move this down to black and white, there's no color. You'll see it's a dot in the center. And if we move it back, just double click on these to go back to center to where it was. And we just want to tone that down a little bit so it's more natural looking. Again, the before and after. And you want to keep your colors within this box area. This is a safety zone so they don't get oversaturated. And there we have the first step of our color grading, which is color correction. At this point, make sure that you do file and save your project out, because we're going to leave this one for now, but we're going to come right back to it. I want to bring up the curves panel next, and we're going to use a slightly different clip to do that. But we're going to come back to this one, so make sure you save it. In this lesson, we're going to take a look at the RGB curves. So the RGB curves, just like anything else in the Lumetri panel, we've been looking at the basic area for exposure, blacks, whites, shadows, contrast. You can do all of this with the curves. A lot of colorists like it because you can give it a lot more control. And that's what we're going to take a look at, is putting a lot of different nodes on the line of the curve and being able to adjust certain areas of the waveform, such as just the shadows without affecting the highlights, or the contrast without affecting the exposure. So let's jump into this now and take a quick look at it. Import the file called Woman in Park from your practice files. So we're going to use the curves control here in the Lumetri panel to adjust this picture. So straight away we can see that it's very flat. If we look at the wave scope here, it's only reaching around 70 to 15 or 20 here. So it's very flat image and washed out looking. So we can go to the curves. Now the curves panel, it has this white line is red, green, and blue. If you overlay them on top of each other, it makes white. This is actually the same adjustments as you get for exposure in the basic control up here for exposure, this line here. So if I do this, exposure goes up or down. Double click and go back. Go to the curves line. If I just click in the center, go up or come down, it does the same thing. It goes darker. So let's double click. Now, you're finding out now that there's multiple ways of adjusting anything, whatever way you want to do it. There's no fixed way. You can use the curves control, the basic panel, the color wheels, they all adjust. The curves control a lot of people like, the colorists like, because it gives you a lot more control. In this area down here is your blacks and your dark shadows. So black and dark down this area. Up here is your whites and your highlights. Also, this is your white line up here. So this is black, and it's the same gradient as before. We have black, then the dark shadows, the lighter shadows. In the center is the midtones, then darker highlights, lighter highlights, and pure white. So just like before, when we were doing it in the basic panel, when we did the blacks first and then the whites, we're now going to do that with the curves. So we're going to take the blacks, and we need this to go lower. So we're going to drag this towards the right, the lower part here. Just drag that down as near as we can to 0. And then we're going to do the same thing for the whites. We want them to go higher, so we're going to go more towards this corner. So grab the node and just start moving it up to the highest white areas. Okay, let's just reset that by double-clicking on any node. Sets it back to here. The other thing we can do now, like we would in the basic panel, is you can adjust contrast. If I adjust contrast, we can see that we get more contrast or less. Again, double-click. So we can do that in the curves. We know on the gradient that if this is pure black, the black and pure white, the shadows would lay here, and the highlights are a little bit down from the pure white. So if I drag them up like so, and then I drag this down like so, we are adjusting the contrast of the image here. And this is what's known as an S-curve. And people like this because you can put as many nodes as you want along this path. For example, in the middle is the 18% gray of the exposure. And we can keep adding nodes to this, and we can fine-tune different areas of that gradient, the shadows, the highlights, the midtones, by adjusting in between these nodes or pulling one higher or lower. So let's double-click again. Let's go back to where we were. Let's make a contrast image here first. And let's just see what that does. Let's move this up. And get our S-curve here. Move this guy down. And we have an S-curve. It's actually could come in a little bit. It doesn't have to be quite as much as that. Now the next thing, we can go to our scopes here, right click, and we want to do the RGB parade, see where our colors are. So I'm just going to right click again and turn off the Luma form. And then we can take a look and see where we are as far as our colors. So the colors don't look too bad here, but we can adjust each one of these with the blue, green, and red. And this side, for example, if I click on this, on the red, and then I move it down, it's going to move the highlight of the red channel down. It doesn't really affect the midtones and the shadows. So it only affects this top part because we're moving just the top part. If I double click on that, let's say we could bring that up a little bit. If we go to the green, same thing, and the blues. And again for the lower part here, we would adjust the lower section here. If I want to go up on the reds here, it will adjust the red channel only down on the shadows area, the darkest parts. Let's reset. This doesn't look actually that bad. It actually does look quite balanced. There's quite a lot of green and yellows in this. And we can see this by going to our other scope, is the vector scope. And you can see here that the vector scope The vector scope is going more towards the yellow and green, and then the blue to cyan. So we take a look at that image. There's a lot of blue cyan in the lake and a lot of green to yellow in the grass area here. So again, if we look at going back to basic, we can look at if we increase or decrease saturation. We can see when we go too big and we're outside the safety zone, you can see it's very, very bright. But look where we started. And then if we come back to where the scope looks good, remember if we go all the way back, it's going to go to gray. So if we come up here to a nice sort of area in our safety zone, what looks realistic, keep an eye on the picture itself. We're in a nice safe zone here. So that's before and after. So here's another tip for balancing color for you. Gray, there's a path in here, gray path. So that if there's ever anything like gray, you can choose that, you can mask it out. So if we click on the clip, go to Effects, close down opacity, get the masking pen tool, and draw a square here, like so, and then turn the opacity back on. We're just looking at this now. So if we go back to Lumetri scopes, you can see if we let's get rid of this one here. There's two things that'll go on here. Let's look at this one first. Let's get rid of the vector scope. And you can see that the red is the highest, the green and the blue is the lowest. So we can use our curves to go to red. We'll leave the red where it is. We'll go to the green. This is the shadows. This little piece here is the highlight here. So go to green, and we want to just take that up a little bit. So we can grab the green node and just move it up a little bit. To try to match where the red is. Like so. And then go to the blue channel. Do the same thing. So now they're all matched up. And that should be, if we even go back to looking at the vector scope, is pure gray. It's now a dot. So we matched up this is gray. We know it's gray in real life. This is now gray because we're just looking at this. And our RGB channels are all matched as well. So that should mean that it should help the color in the main picture. So go to Effects, Controls, turn opacity back off. And just click anywhere inside of here to get rid of the mask. So again, if we look behind, this is original, and this is where we are now. And that's how we can utilize curves. So by looking at all of our vector scopes here, so if we have a good look at them, the balance of the color is good, the saturation, we're good, we have good contrast between 100 and 0. Now we can see after that adjustment of the gray, we're off a little bit in the red versus the green and the blue. So we can actually go down, and again, you can use lots of different ways to do this, but I don't want to confuse you too much. Leave the curves as they are. And we can come down to color wheels and match. And then we're in the highlights, midtones and shadows. We'll get into this later, but we're going to just increase the red highlights a little bit. If you watch up above, we can move that red just to bring it up a touch. So it gives it a bit more balance. Again, before, after, and I think that looks good. That's pretty much what it looked like. It was early morning on a sunny morning day. The sun was just coming out from over this area here, just starting to come up. All right. So next we're going to do some matching if you have multiple clips. So go and import into the project folder a file called Guy and Girl on Train 2. Just drag that over to your timeline. And it's the same two people, but you can see here the difference between color correction and the next video clip. So the first step is what we can do is just take the original clip, right click and say copy, then go to the new clip and then right click and say paste attributes. Make sure Lumetri color is on and say OK. So now turning this on and off, it will apply what we did to this clip, assuming this was shot at the same time, which I presume it was. It's the same people on the same train, and it will apply what we've done to this clip to that one. So it's pretty quick. So let's see if we can match this a little bit better. Go to color wheels and match. Go to the comparison view. And here what we see is in this side is our first clip. It'll run through here, the reference clip. And the playhead down here is the new clip. So we can visually see, but also what it does, because it has a side-by-side view or a vertical view. But in the side-by-side view, we have side-by-side also of the scopes. So while clicked on the new clip, go to basic correction here. And we can look at this scope here first and see what happens if we bring down the exposure level to match. And then use the blacks to bring that up a little bit. So now each scope is matched here. And also it's pretty matched between the left and the right of each of the RGB scopes. So this one still looks a little bit darker to me, but if you zoom into the vector scopes, you can see that this is actually a little bit higher on the whites. But another little trick you can do is go to color wheels and match, make sure face detection is on, and just do apply match. And it will apply a match from this one to this one. And you can see it bumped up the exposure level and it's a light brighter. So we'll go with that. You can close comparison view. And then if we go between the two clips into the next one, it still could do is a little bit of tweaking, but compared to the beginning, if we take the color off on that one, this was the original. So we're a lot closer. At least they have the same type of tonal range. Her face is a lot brighter. Maybe she's right underneath the light right here. So we're going to play with that in a little bit with the mask. So the next thing I want to do is, her face is much brighter in this part of the clip than in the next section, whether the lighting changed. So we need to sort of try to match that away a little bit. So the way to do that is to use a mask. We need to add another Lumetri effect. So go up here, click on this and say add Lumetri color effect. So it adds a second one down here. We can then say rename, and I'm just going to call this one face. So looking over here now, we can see that there's the original Lumetri for this one, and then one called face. So my next thing to do is to make a mask. So under the face Lumetri color, I'm going to click on this pen tool and draw a mask around her skin tone area, just like this. and go like that, and then give it some blending. Now I know that as this moves, you can see that the mask doesn't follow her face all over the place. So what we have to do is do a tracking mask. So first step is go to the Lumetri mask face, click on the mask so you can see it. It's blue again. Make sure the wrench tool says preview is on. Make sure you're on the first frame of the clip, and then make sure you're going to press play. But before you do, make sure mask is on again, and then press play. We'll let this speed up. If at any time the mask is moving too far away, then you need to stop it and adjust it. You can see it's making keyframes here automatically. So Premiere is trying to mask her face as the image is moving throughout the video clip. Once that's done, make sure you're on the clip. Make sure you're on Lumetri color face. Go to color wheels and match. And now we can go to midtones and just drive up the color a little bit, like so, and highlight, just to give her a bit more color in her face. And we can go between the two and take a quick look, and you can see the effect on and off. And if it looks too orange, just bring it back a little bit. Again, on and off. Just give her face, she's not so pale looking compared to the next one here. You can do the same thing for a hand as well. So a hand, all you've got to do is do exactly the same thing. And you would just draw the second mask by hitting on the, make sure you're on Lumetri color face, this clip, click on the pen tool again, and draw around. You can even come off the area here, like so, and it will automatically do the same effect that it did for the first one. And you can see it's called Mask 2. So if we click anywhere off there now and go back to fit, and if we take a look at the before and after, you can see her hand and her face both have a darker skin tone now. It's not so pale. Next, for an effect or a grading, we're going to add an adjustment layer over the top. So just go down to here to new item, click on it, and say adjustment layer. Just say OK, and then drag the adjustment layer over on top of the video clips. You can drag this along all of them. This adjustment layer is like a clear film. So any adjustments that we make to here in color will affect all the clips at once and doesn't apply the effect onto the actual clip itself. You'll notice that if we click on the adjustment layer, there is no Lumetri panel here. So just click anywhere over here and it will bring up Lumetri color. So here, click on HSL secondary and then go to key. Now we're going to set the color here just by clicking on this and click on this guy's face. Make sure this is not on blue at the moment. Go to gray. And then we can move these sliders. This is hue, saturation, and luminance. This is choosing the color that we just picked. We can also use the plus key to click on parts of his face. And then we're going to move these guys around. Try to isolate just his face and his skin color. This is moving the whole thing, like toning in the actual color that the picker checked. And this is like the feathering effect of it. This is saturation. So we want to try to get this as much on him as possible. And this is luminance here. So play around with these until you get as much as you can. You will pick up some other things as well. That's just because, you know, different colors in the scene. So now when that's done, we're going to click off the gray, or we're going to click on this guy. And what that's going to do is everything that's gray here won't be affected. So his skin won't be affected, but everything that isn't will be. Next, we're going to go to correction, and we're going to drag this down into the teal look. But first, let's turn this off. Make sure this is still blue. And then just drag this teal down here. And now, especially in the dark areas, if we turn this effect on and off, you can see it gave us the orange and teal look without affecting his skin tone. So one other little trick here, we don't want everything that's in the shadows. This is mid-tones, by the way. If you want shadows, they're over here. We can drag down the shadows into the teal also. And then if we turn that off, we don't want everything turning blue in the shadows. So one last little thing here is that we can add another Lumetri color effect. Let's rename that one to shadow. What we want to do is just make sure that we're on shadow up here, and then go to curves and hue saturation curves. And to try to get the blacks black, we're going to use the Luma versus Sat. Just click over here. This is the same. This is very dark, very white on the curves. We're going to click around here, click over here, just drag that down. And then anything below that now in the shadows will be crushed down, so they won't be bright blue in the shadows. It'll help, and you'll probably see that more in like her black sweater here. And just that little bit of it just helps in the effect. So looking at the overall thing here, if we turn the adjustment off and on, this is our final effect. And there you go. Play around with it and see what you can come up with. So go to where you're storing your practice files, and you need to pull in the video clip called Fountain, and also be aware that there's another folder in here called LUTs, and we're going to be using this LUT. So here we've pulled the fountain into the timeline. We have our scopes open. We don't need the vector scope. The RGB trace shows us that it's pretty well balanced already, so the white balance was good. And this is a flat profile. It's shot on a Sony a7 III, and that has a thing called an Slog. It's a flat profile. It looks like this in the camera, but actually it gives you more control over color. Now our first step, just like anything else, is to address the tonal and the exposure, white balance and saturation first, before we put a LUT, a lookup table, which is a look. Firstly, always do the color correction. So let's close down this guy here because I want to see the waveform. We can see it's very flat, which is what it's showing us. So just like before, we're in the basic tab. We're going to bring down the blacks like so, just above 0. We're going to take the whites up to just below 100, like 95. We're going to take the shadows down. We're going to take the highlights up. And this is our before and after. We can have a look at our contrast a little bit, which is good around there. We want to be anywhere between 90 something to about 10. So that's where we are here. And that's looking good as far as the actual day. Swapping over to our RGB parade, the bottom of the scopes look really well adjusted. The green and the red are a little bit higher than the blue. So we can bring the blues up a little bit. Just like this. And we can drop this down maybe a little bit just to match them up. If we undo that though, and just double click on this to get it back to 0, we also said if there's anything white in the image, you can click on it with the white balance selector, but also grays. So you click on a gray like this, it will try to adjust the white balance also. Looks like the blue went a little bit too high, so bring that back a little bit. But looking pretty good now as far as white balance adjustment. Next, let's choose our vector scope YUV and also get rid of the parade. So here is our saturation. So we can bring this up a little bit like so. And this is our before and after as far as color correction goes. Now then, let's look up tables. You'll see in the basic correction that you can apply a LUT. So these are different ones that are built in here. And you can see straight away that it will try to correct it for you. One thing I would suggest is that you don't put LUTs in here. You don't put them in here, you put them down in the creative area under look. You can see there's a lot of different ones here. And it's quite easy here. If you look, shows you what they look like. If you just scroll through, you can actually just pick a look that you like from the list. Double click on it and it'll apply that. And there's starting places where you can then go back up to basic correction. And because we didn't put the LUT in here, we can still do all this basic correction first. Because this is lower, it's a layer below. A bit like if you're using Photoshop or something, it's a layer. So I don't particularly like a lot of these. One thing I wanted to do, and I've added it into the practice data, is a LUT for, this was shot again on a Sony a7 III, and every camera, whether it's Canon, Panasonic, Nikon, Sony, they know if you shoot in their flat profile. In Sony it's called Slog. I think Canon is called Slog. They have a built LUT that will start to make this correction. It's got the adjustments in it for if you shot on a Sony and it's an S-Log profile like this. You can see we just did it manually, but what we can do is don't put it in basic correction, leave that alone, go back to square one, go down to creative, and then under here go to browse. You can get these off the Sony, Canon, Nikon websites, by the way. And then this is the S-Log to LC709 LUT for Sony. And then this will automatically give you a starting point. And then we can go back to basic correction and make some more corrections here. For this, look for a video clip called Boxer in your practice files. Drag it into the timeline. Let's open Lumetri scopes. It's pretty flat. Let's open up the basic panel. Looking at the waveform scope, we can play around with our blacks. And then our whites need to go way up to the top here. Our shadows, our highlights need to come up. and then our contrast. We'll just drop the whites a little bit. Next, open your RGB parade, and the blues are a little bit higher in this one, so let's drop them a little bit just to try to even these guys out, and then bring the reds down a touch. The lower section for the shadows, the red and green look okay, but the blues look a little bit high, so we're going to use curves to correct that. So in order to save time, I've corrected it. All I did was go to the RGB curves, go to the blue channel. I lifted this up to move this up more in line with this at the very top. And then down at the bottom, I just came off a little bit, trying to keep these lines similar. And this was a little bit higher than the very, very bottom. So I took this point here, dragged it down a little bit just to move the bottom of this in line with the others. So we're good here. So looking at this, the vector scope, you can always check your skin tones. So we're doing color correction right here. This is known as a flesh line, and the skin should land on this line. It's not only used for saturation. To do that, go to the effects controls and go to opacity and click the FX off for a second. Then you can zoom in a little bit here. And then use the pen tool and just make a simple mask like so, just an area of the guy's skin. Then go off here and click the effect for opacity back on. Now you just get a portion of his skin. Go to the scopes, and now you can see that it's only looking at his skin, and you can see it's slightly off. It should land exactly on this line. So it's slightly off towards the yellow area. So what we can do is bring this back towards red and magenta. So if we bring this over here and drag it this way, just that little bit, that will make the skin tones look more natural. So going back to effects controls, turn the opacity effect off, click anywhere off the mask to get rid of it, and go back to fit. And that is a natural looking skin tone. The other thing we can do then is look at scopes under here, and we can just increase the saturation a little bit to bring his skin tone and colors up more. And that's all looking good. So the effect before was like this, and now we're here. Now we're going to add a teal background. Okay, I've added adjustment layer over our footage so that that's what will get the color grade. Let's go to HSL secondary. Let's choose our color, which is this guy's skin tone. And then we're going to turn on the gray. Then we can play around with these, try to get as much of his face and arm as we can. Like so. Now click on this blue inverse button here. So everything that's gray will not be changed. So we can play around with this a little bit here too, because you can get a good view of it right here. Like so. See if we fade this a little bit more. And that's good enough, I think. Let's add some denoise and blur. We can take the color gray off now. Leave the blue on, because this means whatever color we change, the rest of it will be affected. So just drag the color wheel, correction, down into the blues, into the teal. And there we have a nice orange and teal look effect. This is what it was like before and after. Hey, you've done it! Hopefully we've demystified that Lumetri panel for you, and you've learned quite a bit from this course. We have lots of other courses here, so I hope you enjoyed this one, and I look forward to seeing you in one of our other courses. Thanks a lot again, and take care.